Now, you mentioned the case, particularly with Aaron, Judge Zweibel. Do you think that with a different prosecution team, you might have had a different outcome?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, well, for one, there was the rampant lies that took place in the courtroom, the things that they especially associated with my upcoming misdemeanor case that are simply not true. I can't really talk that much about that because, well, I had another misdemeanor case. I think that they got away with saying things as women that never would have been permissible to have been said as men. I think they seemed personally offended by the woman that I was presenting, by my identity as a woman. In a way, I think that brought some tension into a courtroom that worked to criminalize me a little bit more. But ultimately, I am seriously appalled that 8 women on a jury bought that.
Now, speaking of the jury and of the cases, how do you think that your case will affect other cases? Do you think this is going to have an effect? And if so, what?
Oh, yeah. I think this is a massive precedent in several ways. I mean, the first was thrown out of the window, the fifth, the sixth, arguably, in the way that the jury was instructed. Even to the, I'm talking amendments, but even as far as the way that Zweibel controlled the courtroom and what people were allowed to wear, deterred people from being allowed entry with cell phones, and the rings of police that halted focus from anybody onto me, or conversely and emotionally me on anybody else. I think that we can expect in the future for this precedent to be used. I think this was first and foremost a warning that if you dissent, it will be dangerous and it will be punishable with the possibility of jail time. But I also think that in the future, if we were to see another rise in activity like Occupy Wall Street, I think we can expect our ACDs to go out the window. I think we can expect our plea bargains to go out the window. I think they made their case against someone, and I think that people largely thought of me in some sort of an eye-rolling fashion. Here comes Cecily, we're gonna have to hear her like circa 1960s spiel on nonviolence again. And they took that person, the moderate, and they made me out to be in the narrative of the violent, unruly, dangerous, possibly moving towards terrorist, Joker-like person. So I think that they have all of the cards, and I think that the only thing that we have going for us, realistically, there's a captain. Hi. Realistically, is for us to say we will not be moved, we will not be scared, we will not back down, we will not be frightened out of safeguarding and upholding our constitutional rights. I think that we have to move forward en masse with the privilege that we've been given to have the NLG, with the support models that we're developing both in court and in jail. And I think that essentially we have to stop taking the pleas. I think we've got to start challenging the system, figure out how far gone our democracy is, and really stand up, because we're the only people, I think, that have the privilege to do so. And I think beyond that, by calling ourselves organizers, it's our responsibility to go through that process. With less than 5% of felonies making it ever to trial, I think that we're required to do so.
Absolutely. Now, with regard, I want to shift gears slightly from the macro and focus on your experience here for a little while. Specifically, you called in an earlier interview with the Village Voice, you called jail, quote, a series of constant humiliations. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, you could be sitting in your room. Oh, here's a good one. I went back to my room and I ordered my bed. Your bed is like your house. I live sort of in a neighborhood, and you have neighbors, and you establish your own living habits. And I order my bed so as not to bother people at night with food, so everything's readily available. I'm always writing, so I don't want to be creeped in the papers, etc. So I set up my entire bed in my new area. You have to wrap your sheets around in a particular way, and you have to try to hoard all these blankets in order to provide padding on your metal bed. And it was probably a 3 or 4 hour process to really set up my bed. And I just sat down, and then all of a sudden, like 45 officers come in, some of which have full riot gear on with wooden, like straight up wooden batons. And I learned, I'm like looking around like anxiety attack mode, like what the fuck is happening here? And they're like, it's a search. And so they ask me, okay, and you don't know what to do. And you're just supposed to be expected to know what to do. So everybody starts like moving and turning. So you turn face down and you wait until you're called line by line to go to the bathroom, and you have to strip search all the way down, take off everything that you have. You have to squat. So they make sure that there's nothing in your vagina or other cavities. And you go into the bathroom, and it's like these lines of stalls, and there's these like lines of officers lined up in front of these lines of stalls. So you're just like standing there as like, this is probably, so then, okay, what happens is, it's so visceral, I haven't even told anybody this yet, because this is not what you talk about on the phone. So then after that, you have to put back on your clothes, and you have to move to the day room, where you all have to get in the same line in which you were strip searched, which is the same line, it's your bed, you have to turn, you have to face the wall. And this process is also the process that's used to train the new incoming guards on how to be firm with inmates. So you have like 3 or 4 captains like yelling various orders about you, like, hey miss, which is everybody. So you turn around, like, you turn around one more time, or take away your good days. And you're like, so essentially you end up never turning around, even when they are asking you to turn around to go back into the room, and they're like, I said turn the fuck around! Turn the fuck around! Why aren't you fucking listening to me? And they're like, because you're gonna have to turn around, you're gonna take the good days away. So at this point you're practically peeing yourself. And in my particular instance, my bunkie, Hayes, had an asthma attack. She has really severe asthma. And she was wheezing, like to the point that like the deep wheezing that's like characteristic of this person's about to actually like not be able to breathe. So I was like, they were asking her, where is your inhaler? Where is your inhaler? And she's like, and I'm like, that's my bunkie. And they're like, turn around. I was like, that's my bunkie, I know her inhaler, I just got to do her inhaler. And they're like, I said, shut the fuck up. And I was like, okay, listen, we gotta get her inhaler, or she's gonna really, you're gonna have a lawsuit on your hands. And so like they're like, all right, hurry up. So I hurried up, and they're like, I didn't see run. And so I try to slow down, fast walk, and I'm going through stuff, and they're like, what are you doing? What are you going through? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just looking for an inhaler. And at this point, so I get her an inhaler. She ends up having to go downstairs for a shot, a steroid shot. So I'm freaking out, and finally starts trying to go back in, and I stand there with your mattress on your arms. That they literally take every single one of your buckets. By this point, I have 500 or 600 letters to respond to write back to, this, that, and all these other papers and books, and they're like, why do you have so many books? And I'm like, with that, like, why would anybody in here read so much sort of tone? And I was like, because I'm a grad student, and it's just like, at this point, I'm just like, sitting there with this, and the point being is that I was having a nice day in my neighborhood with, my bunkie, with Ira, who's like, she's my madrina, she's like my godmother, my jailhouse godmother. I had organized my stuff. I was finally getting like accustomed to my new home here, and bam! It's just like your world can be rocked. Within the next 3 days, we had another 2 searches, and then I woke up to a P test, and they were like, you failed amphetamines, and I was like, I take Adderall, So, but it's this it's something like this every day.
And what I'm seeing right here, do you feel that this is caused by a particular meanness in certain guards or certain individuals, or is this more a failure to communicate, or is it a combination of the two?
Neither. The guards, as far as I've seen them, especially the COs in my household, honestly, have gone out of their way to be advocates for us, that really do try to get us on vacation, really try to get, they worked so hard to get my Pumas in here. Like, they really, I mean, they're stuck here every day, you know, in jail. They don't get cell phones, they get searched, they get yelled at by captains in the same way. It's, as I described it, it's the perfect example, the perfect vision of the alienation of capitalism. It's a structural humiliation. It's specifically the way that it has been determined is efficient, and this is the way that you need to structure this facility in order to ensure that people don't come back here, and that's a justification. On the other hand, with capitalism, right, it's that trickle-down economics, is that by innovation and building things and moving fast and production, things that people want, then there will be more money, so there will be more wealth to spread around. We know both of these falsities to be completely absurd in the reality of our daily experience. What are the reincarceration rates in America? How many people are able to live today in a way that is remotely healthy in capitalism? But it's the myth that we tell ourselves, this is the efficient way of doing this, and everybody's just got to do their job within it. So often you'll have these guards come back as soon as the captain leaves, and they're like, I'm sorry, that was really shitty, I didn't mean to, you know, but when they're around, you have to, or we're going to get written up, which, who are these people? They're not like downwardly mobile, upper middle class white folks. They're like people who come from the same neighborhoods, the same backgrounds generally, as the very people that are in here.
Now, what I wanted to mention really quickly, so the other inmates, you mentioned a few of them. What has your experience been interacting with them? What are their cases, and how do they treat you?
Well, I mean, just to get through I guess what I would say, the inhumane or the boring parts. I mean, everybody practically is in here because of the violence and poverty. But generally speaking, it has to do with drugs, addiction, selling drugs or addiction, occasionally prostitution, grand larceny, petty larceny. That's the big handful. I would say that's probably like, you got like 80% of the cases right there. And then you can just throw in conspiracy, all these other things, because apparently all these people are running around in conspiracy target scams, but you know, when our big bags do it, then it's totally okay. As far as who they are, this is hands down the most incredible part of my experience here, and something that almost makes my time here worthwhile. Never in the life of a female do you get to spend every waking hour, 24 hours, with 40, 50 other women from diverse backgrounds, cultures, even classes to a lesser degree, and have to figure out that coordination problem of how to learn from one another, how to listen to one another, how to understand the common struggle of womanhood. And you start to realize that each one of these women, they are organizers. They organize everything. There are women in here. The common dialogue is that their husbands don't know how to enter PIN numbers. They don't know how to pay the bills. They don't know how to transfer money into their sons' or daughters' accounts. You learn that they're all working in addition to being these mothers running the household. That there are also people in the community that like are constantly taking care of other people. That they are totally devastated to be here, not because of their own freedom, but because of all of the people that rely upon them. And often are here because they did things because people rely upon them. You also get a sense of how rampant violence against women is, how many of these women have been raped, how many of these women have children that were on behalf of rapists, that still have this incredible compassion and connection to these children. And you just start to realize that the extent of pressure put, and then, okay, the extent of pressure put on women is so maddening that to some degree you don't understand how most women don't end up here or in some psychiatric ward. And then on top of that, there's this stigma as officers COs have point blank told me, you shouldn't be here. Prison or jail is a man's place. You should be at home taking care of your children. This isn't attractive. And there is this stigma that jail is a thing that happens to men. You know, but for women, you should be taking care of your children. You should be at home taking care of your man. And even when you talk about, like, from the women, you know, you're talking about the women's jail versus the male jail, and how coordinated they are to fight for their own rights, and how more rights they have, versus how women have been so pit against each other, that it is a basic coordination problem to live amongst and with women. And it's incredible to have that experience, and to make all these new relationships that I never, especially in politics, especially in radical left politics. Like, how many women friends do I have? You know?
Absolutely.